Hey everyone, we've decided, Ever and I, that we're going to break down some of the movements that we do in our yoga practice. So, seeing as there's so many classes online at the moment, you can't get quite the guidance that you would in a class. We've decided to really focus on specific movements so that when you do practice on Zoom or on YouTube or whatever, it's quite clear what is needed physically in each movement and also with your breath. Can you want that?
No, that's pretty clear to me. So just go at your own pace, at your own level, and just have a look at what we've got to offer, and hopefully next time you come to your mat in a class, it all makes complete sense to you.
So we're going to start with the ones that are most common. So down dog, and then the vinyasa that is often referred to as take your flow, or what else do people like to say? Move through your vinyasa.
It starts to feel quite natural anyway, so you'll find when we do come through a transition, you'll be in a down dog, and then you've got the opportunity to move or to stay.
So we'll start with down dog, which is known in Sanskrit as Ardha Mukha Svanasana. So it's always important that the fingers are spread really wide. And if I try and peel Eva's fingertips up off the floor, they're not going to lift because she's gluing them down. There's a slight lift right through the center of her palm so that the pressure is on this corner, and each 5 of the fingertips, so that that wrist is fully supported. Now what tends to happen is people's shoulders tend to pull forwards, usually because there's a tightness in the hamstring and they don't bend their knees. If you bend your knees, you'll see that you can then pull further back, which puts less pressure into the wrists. So we want those shoulders away from the wrists. So what we have here is a really long line. We want to have the tailbone tucking up, so there's a pelvic tilt upward. The knees can be as bent as you need. That is not important. Once you're further expanded through the backs of the legs, it may be that you start straightening out like Eva is here. And once that's happening and the lines through the back half of the body are quite open, you'll find that the heels can come towards the floor. If the heels do come to the floor, you can lift the toes and you'll create just a little bit more of a lengthening feeling for yourself. All right, so from your downward facing dog, people tend to say, oh, have a little play in your down dog. So that can mean a lot of different things. You can just start moving around and exploring your body. From down dog, we set up a whole lot of our different shapes. The one that tends to happen a lot is a vinyasa flow, which is what it's called. But basically, it's where we move forward inhaling to a plank. We tend to round and roll through, but there are other ways. Now from the plank, you're pushing your chest away from the floor so that you're not dumped down. So Evan will show you, that's a sag. That's going to create a lot of pressure in your lower back. So when she pushes up and engages, she's really strengthening through her rhomboids, and her core is on tight and her thighs are on strong. From there, she looks slightly forward to the top edge of the mat. So she's not cranking her neck up, and she's also not looking down at her toes. We want that neck in the same line as the spine the whole time. Now, when you're a beginner, or even when you're not. So I practice with my low flow. I don't do chaturangas anymore. I use my exhale to place my knees underneath where they are. So what people tend to do is they instead set their knees up for a tabletop. So show them the tabletop, which is where they're directly under the hips. So you're not going to be able to come through the low flow in that way. So place the knees behind the hips. So if you just land them down, you'll see that you're still got that diagonal angle. You untuck the toes. Good. We stay gazing forward. Now instead of the elbows coming outward like you would do in a gym style push-up, we keep those elbows tucked in. We keep the chest broad and open so that the front of the shoulders don't fall and roll inward. You'll have a look when she comes down. So exhale breath is to slowly come down. Now what tends to happen is it gets quite strong and people might start rolling and collapsing through the front of the shoulder. So show them what that one looks like. Alright, so if it's way too strong, that is perfectly fine. There are other ways around getting down to your mat. So what you would do is go down to where you can manage, and then from there you're more than welcome to very slowly control the thighs down and roll. What we will be aiming for is that you can get yourself down the whole time by just bending the elbows and keeping the rest of the body straight. So if Eva uses her inhale to come back onto her knees, she'll again exhale, lower down, looking forwards. Perfect. She keeps her hands there and she inhales now and pulls her chest up off the floor for a baby cobra. Now she's up quite high, but she's not actually using the strength of her hands. She's using the muscles to the back. Her legs are on strong and her feet are pressed down towards the floor. She's still looking towards the mat and not forward. So see her neck is all a long line. Then on her exhale, her forehead will come down to the floor. On her inhale, she'll come back to her knees. On her exhale, she'll push her bum to her heels, child's pose with tucked toes, and then she'll inhale and return to down dog. So we're going to do that as one flow with the breath. Inhale, pull forward. Exhale, knees to the floor, untuck the toes, inhale, breath. Exhale, bend the elbows. Inhale, baby cobra. Exhale, roll the forehead down. Inhale, return to the knees. And then exhale, press back, tuck toes, puppy pose. Inhale, hips in the air. That is your low flow. When someone says that there's a flow on offer, this is one of the variations you might use. On your inhale, roll forward to a plank. On your exhale, move into a tabletop this time. Now sometimes we get quite tired in our practice and we don't want to do the push-up. So we can move forward plank, inhale breath. Exhale to a tabletop. Inhale, she opens into a cat-cow. So what she's done here is created a bit of an arch. She's actually pulling her heart and belly button forward. And then on the exhale, her chin tucks to the chest and she fully rounds so that the stretch is now for the upper. Inhale, stretch through the front of the body. Exhale, round it up. So you'll do this in your own breath, and then you are going to inhale, forwards up. On your exhale, tuck the toes round, come back into your cow. And then push into the knees, inhale, push yourself back. Good. All right, so that's for some people. There's those two options there. For people who are a little stronger through the triceps, the core, and they don't have any shoulder injuries, they might take the chaturanga option. On your inhale, you'll still roll forwards to a plank. On the exhale, she's going to bend the elbows just like you did on the knees, but the knees stay off the floor. She doesn't drop her face. Come back up for a second, Eva, and show them what we often see in chaturanga where people drop their face down first. Okay, so they start to dump through their neck. So come back up, inhale, breath. On the exhale, she remains looking slightly forward. Her shoulders are stacked past the wrists. And then on the exhale, she lowers halfway till those elbows and her torso are about the same height. She's going to drive forwards with her heel coming over the tops of the feet. Press the tops of the thighs up off the floor. So in her up dog, she has her shoulders and wrists on the same line, so they're completely vertical. Her hips are pulled forward and her heart is pressing back. Some schools of yoga will teach you to drop the head back, while some will teach you to keep your neck aligned with the spine. It's a personal preference. From here, she'll be able to use her next breath to move straight through to a downward facing dog. So let's do that all in one movement, one breath. Inhale, roll forwards. Exhale, chaturanga. Inhale, upward facing dog. Exhale, downward facing dog. Inhale, plank. low flow. Exhale, knees to the floor. Inhale, baby cobra. Good. Exhale, forehead down. Inhale, come back into the supported plank. Exhale, tuck the toes, puppy pose. Inhale, downward facing dog. And the other option, which was the cat-cows. Inhale, forward. Exhale, knees under hips, tabletop. Untuck the toes. Inhale, open, expand. Exhale, round in, curl. Inhale, open, expand, tuck the toes. And then exhale, can go straight back. Or you can do another round where you close and then use your inhale to come up. It's a personal preference of what you decide to do. All three of these options will see you flowing at a very similar time and pace with everybody else in the room. But what is the most important is that you are flowing in time with your own breath. So none of these movements were rushed. They were all paced with Eva's individual breath. So she's now moving through at the same time as her breath. So it's like every movement you're seeing, you're knowing how fast her breath is moving in and moving out. Perfect. Eva, is there anything you'd like to add to those or demonstrate for that particular flow?
No. Thanks, Bella. That was very informative for beginners. So
yeah, no worries.
I
would like to show some of the things that we see that people aren't aware that they're doing. So this is the one that I see often, which is when moving through the chaturanga. Like I said, it's the head drops. And then they come down. So the neck is out of alignment and then they're instantly going to dump into their shoulders. So it's important that you really pull up and stay open and broad in
a lot of the time we're just too concerned about what's going on behind us rather than looking forward. So that tends to be a common theme I find in quite a lot of poses. So keeping the gaze forward. Unless you're in a down dog, generally the gaze is between the feet to hip distance apart. Drawing the belly in and gazing to the abdomen as well, but not rounding too much through the spine as well. Another thing in downward facing dog is that kind of action. There is also a lot of people who are quite open and hyperextend. So I'm actually dipping through my spine here, lower back, because I am quite open. So for me, I'm quite aware that I actually need to draw my belly in and press back. So just being aware that you're not quite
so some people who are natural backbenders is what Eva's explaining. Some people have a natural backbend that when they stand they're quite arched. And so that can get exaggerated in down dog. And Eva's one of those people. That's not a natural position for me. I'm quite...
You're the opposite.
So she has to focus more on pulling in. And then some people in their down dog are rounded. So Eva will show you. What I would suggest for these people is they bend their knees significantly and focus on pushing right back. And this will take time to kind of iron out a little, but then at least you've started to push things back and up. Does that make sense?
And at any point, be sure to drop to the knees and come to a child's pose if you need. The wrists can get a little tender. Spinning the palms open and maybe wiggling the fingers a little is also a really good option, or just giving them a little bit of a roll.
And know that down dog starts uncomfortable, but it does actually become a rest pose. Everybody who's first starting out in yoga does find down dog challenging. On the wrists, it's tiring. The more you do it, the more that your body the muscles start getting used to that particular movement, and it does become quite a restful shape. Even though it's restful, it's strong.
Another thing I tend to see is a lot of people dumping a lot of weight in the hands and the wrists, and that's just basically not pushing the floor away. So it's being in this action here as opposed to this action here.
Yeah.
So really ensure that you're pressing rather than, I don't even know if I can do rather than kind of that, you want to really push the floor away.
Yeah, I use a lot of analogies of imagining like a fishing line and that there's a hook right at the tailbone and it's sort of being pulled out and up onto that same diagonal action as your spine is on, so that you really get that pull up and away from the floor, so that there's a lightness, because we never want to dump down in our practice. We're always lifted and light. Cool. All right, stay tuned for our next breakdown. We will break down our next sequence.
Hopefully that was helpful. Namaste.
Namaste, people.